I'll start with a quick introduction about myself. My name is Ahsan Shamim. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of V2X Network, and we are a very early stage startup based out of Munich, Germany. And what we are trying to do basically is, in very simple terms, we are trying to automate the process of in-vehicle payments. That being said, that how drivers pay today, we are trying to automate it, while at the same time we are trying to address the topic about the overhead of transactions, like in terms of costs associated with it, and that's what we are trying to do. Uh, just a quick introduction about the company first, maybe. As I said, we are very early stage. So we have been working in the stealth mode for about 1 year, and then we were officially founded in 2019. We specialize, that's how we call it. We specialize in autonomous transactions. So we have actually different possible solutions for vehicle payments. Of course, we are trying to address this market with different ways, depending upon the interest on the OEMs. And we are already engaged with a couple of European OEMs already at the productions, not production, but the development stage. Unfortunately, this is all under NDA, so I'm not able to disclose, but hopefully this will be public soon. And what our solution is doing, it's basically an end-to-end solution, mainly for in-vehicle payments for all different kind of connected services like parking, charging, toll, also for, like if there are smart cities accessing the data and if they need to make the payment for that. That's the topic that we are trying to address. If I speak of the inspiration we have, I mean, there are different figures which have been already quoted during the presentations today. I'm just referring to something that we got from McKinsey. So if I speak of the mobility megatrends, then only in a decade from now, there is an estimated, like the estimated transactions size, which is going to be happening for all different kind of connected services, is going to be up to $1,500 billion. So this is a very, very huge number. And I'm speaking of all the transactions happening, like in terms of drivers paying, like for coffees, for parking, for charging, for toll, as a part of their journey, let's say from to or back from work. So this is a very huge market. And if I refer to another figure, I think only very recently within US, there was a report published that only within US, the commuters are already spending up to 260 billion US dollars as a part of their journey to and from work, and in terms of services like parking, charging, buying coffee. It could be anything, anything which you can do while being inside the vehicle. So we see that there is a trend that the transactions are rising, and the transactions are rising dramatically. And this is the problem that we are trying to basically solve, because these transactions will come with the transaction overhead. So if I go, I am sure that most of the audience here already knows that most of the vehicles which are produced today, they can talk. I mean, in terms of V2X connectivity, standard connectivity, it could be vehicle to network, so vehicle to cloud, which is actually the mechanism which is used to share the data with the third parties, like, for example, the companies like Autonomo and High Mobility, they are doing. Vehicles can also speak with other vehicles, that V2X connectivity through the infrastructure, V2I. So there is already a possibility for vehicles to speak with all different kind of entities. What is still missing is a standardized way of making payments. Like if the vehicle is communicating with the charging station for the sake of charging, then is there a mechanism with which the vehicle can actually also automatically pay to the charging station? And that's the topic that we are trying to basically address. So that's what I'm saying, that, like this in-vehicle payments, different kind of experiments are being done. I would say some car manufacturers have already integrated the credit cards. Some are trying to use the blockchain technologies for the sake of these payments. So there are different mechanisms which are available. The way we are trying to do it in at V2X Network is basically, so we have a hybrid solution. We are also using blockchain for the sake of smart contracts and automating the stuff. But for the sake of payments, if I speak of payments only, the way we are trying to do is that, as we know that the vehicles are already able to communicate, so we know that. So what we do is that we basically very simply, using a standard V2X communication and identification technology, which is like a certificate based, what we do is that we link the identity of the vehicle with a bank account. So that's and then there's a concept of software based digital wallet within the vehicle. and this identity is linked to the bank account. So whenever the vehicle has to pay for any kind of a connected service, just like the way it is communicating with other entities to share data, we form a special kind of a message which represents an amount. I can actually, for the sake of clarity, I can maybe compare it with WhatsApp. You might have heard that WhatsApp recently introduced a payment mechanism, and I think they have already launched it in Brazil. So that's exactly the way this is working. So there is already a communication channel, and we incorporate special kind of messages which are which is further linked to a bank account, and these messages, once sent from the vehicle to any party, represent an amount which is being sent, and then later on we as a company have the authorization to basically take that money out of the bank account and send to the service provider or any other entity which it is linked to. I'm actually really trying to rush through my slides while keeping an eye on the time. So but anyways, I'll be able to answer the questions afterwards in the QA session. This is the graphical representation of how we basically do it. So on one side, we work directly with the vehicle manufacturers to integrate the vehicle APIs for the sake of data sharing. And on the other side, we are working on service APIs. And these APIs are slightly different to what you just saw in different presentations, for example, for data access. So these APIs are mainly about payments, send money, request money, how much, and if you want to add some price tags onto the data upfront. So these are the kind of the service APIs that we are developing. It's still in development phase, but hopefully we will be able to go public with these APIs very soon. I'll give you a very, very quick example of how this thing actually works to be able to better understand. So if you can see that, let's take an example of an autonomous vehicle. So not necessarily this is required for autonomous vehicle, but let's take an example of an autonomous vehicle. So let's assume there's an autonomous vehicle with parking needs, and it enters a geofence. So as you can see that, like there is already a possibility, as we have mentioned many times, for the vehicle to basically communicate to the charging stations. And there's also a possibility for the parking stations to speak back. So there are multiple parking stations who would want to make an offer, and this has to be on the subscription because they have to subscribe to the vehicle data, which is accessible, let's say, through all different kind of car data platforms. And then there has to be some kind of slot commitment. Like this is one of the use cases that we are addressing for autonomous vehicles, because autonomous vehicles, like manned vehicles, unlike manned vehicles, they cannot wait, they cannot queue up. Well, they can, but ideally they shouldn't. And then the vehicle has to select the best offer because there is no man inside or there is no driver inside. And then once this is all done, then the vehicle has to have the capability of making the payment automatically. So if I speak of the challenges only in this particular use case, first of all, the vehicle does not have a transaction capability. It doesn't know how to pay. It does not have, like an integrated credit card, or this is one thing. Secondly, a very big challenge for especially the European drivers and the cars, that there is no incentive for the car driver to basically share the data or the vehicle to share data for free. On the OEM side, as I mentioned earlier, that there are going to be a lot of transactions, like the vehicle has to pay for parking, charging, toll, and as the connected vehicles are coming more into existence, this transaction is going to rise. If we integrate a credit card, let's say, then for every transaction which is associated with the credit card, of course, there's going to be a transaction fees. And that is basically our USP. This is the patent pending solution right now, where we say that instead of paying the transaction fees to a third party, we are rather establishing, or we are developing our own micropayment solution, where there is a possibility for OEMs to monetize this opportunity. So they can introduce their own transaction fees on this payment solution that we are developing. And this is like a revenue stream, a new revenue stream. And on the service provider side, there is of course a challenge of easy integration, because all different kind of payment mechanisms are already very well integrated in the ecosystem. So how can we take on board different service providers? And that's a very big challenge for us. These are different topics that we are trying to basically address. I won't go into details here in this presentation, but of course I'll be happy to answer these questions afterwards. What I can do is that I can quickly just jump to a demo to basically show you how this thing actually works. So what I'm going to show you is a parking use case. There are different use cases that we are already supporting, but this is a parking use case where you will see a simulation of parking need of a car, selection of the parking, some data transfer, but most importantly, in the end, autonomous payment. So if I go next, this is a pre-recorded demo, and if I'll just quickly stop it here. As you can see here, there are different entities involved in this particular demo. They have their own wallets, and this is again, like the amount which is written here. It's not actually digital cash inside the wallet, but this is a special part of the memory where we store, like how much of money do I have, or how much of money this particular entity have. So this is what we do, and as you can see here, there's a vehicle with some kind of some money in it. So there are two different charging stations. But important to mention here, the first thing that we implement as an incentive mechanism. So there we have an automated mechanism where the vehicle or the vehicle driver can basically put a price tag onto the access over data, and this is configurable. This is configurable in a way that you can configure it for monthly payment, you can configure it for one-time access, and you can also configure it in a way that not necessarily you have to pay, but you can get some kind of incentives, digital incentives, which which we are working with car manufacturers to basically design it as a customer loyalty program. So you contribute to your data, you get some digital points, digital incentives, and then these are your loyalty points, which you can reuse to basically get some discounts in all different kind of services, either offered by the car manufacturer or by their partners. So you can see that, for example, both the charging stations have something like 950 in the end euros in their wallet. If I go forward a little bit, just to show you how this mechanism basically works, the vehicle is going to turn red shortly, indicating that's where it indicates that I now need to park. And that's where our solution basically starts communicating with the parking stations in a specific geofence. But important thing is that as a first step, the vehicle does not disclose its actual data. It only tells to the entities, hey, I'm in your area. It's an anonymous data. You don't disclose the identity, you don't disclose the location, and you say that if you would want to access my actual vehicle data, this is the price tag, and it's 50 cents for the sake of this demo. So if I go forward, you will see that as soon the first step is completed, now there is, oops, sorry, I'll fast forward it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you will see here that, for example, now there is 50, just few more seconds. So now there is, as soon the first step is completed, now there is 50 cents less left in both the wallets. So this is the idea. This is an incentive mechanism, a completely automated digital incentive mechanism where the vehicle communicated, but it only actually disclosed the real data once the entities decided to pay. So this whole process was automated. Once they paid, the actual vehicle data was disclosed, and on disclosure, our system helped the vehicle to pick up the best service in terms of, like there are different parameters that we evaluate, like the time and all that stuff. And however, there is now there's a contract in place upfront, so the vehicle already knows that which parking station I have to go to, what will be the time, and all that stuff. And if I try to fast forward it a little bit, then there are different states that the vehicle goes through. For example, now it's waiting to park, and soon it will be parked. Now its vehicle is parked, and I'll try to just quickly stop it. Yeah. So as soon the vehicle, so there's some dummy delay. As soon the vehicle is done parking, that's the most important thing, that the vehicle basically sends a special message to the parking station as soon the parking is done, as per the contract which was in place upfront, and that message represents the amount which the vehicle owned to the parking station for that particular parking session. And as I mentioned earlier, we as a company have then the authorization to basically withdraw that money from the actual bank account which is linked to that identity and send it to the service provider. And for all of this, of course, we need a banking partner, which we have. Like we have a banking partner here in Germany, and we also have a banking partner in Italy. I think I am already over the time, so I'll try to just
Oh,
finish
it's
off now.
fine.
Yeah, yeah,
Sorry,
okay.
quickly. Like you can have like 5 more minutes. Sorry for interrupting. It's
On,
totally
on,
fine.
okay, I mean I already rushed through the slides, so maybe it's
I'm
okay. So
sorry.
no problem. So I'll just quickly, I mean, these are some of the latest achievements that we have had as a startup. This is only the media coverage that we have received so far, but of course, as I mentioned, that we are already actively working with mainly the European and the Scandinavian car manufacturers right now, and we are in a development stage, but it's progressing well, and let's see where we go with this thing. Thomas, unlike
Yes.
many others, I decided to finish earlier than expected, but